I think Too Cool was
Be Cool. You mean, right? Be Cool.
Be Cool. I think that truly is the best charm per minute, like PER of all of the Rock's movies.
He's a supporting.
No, you're missing
He's
out
not
on
really
the-
in the movie. He's supporting though.
Yeah, like he shows up, he does his job, and he does it really
Yeah.
well, and he leaves. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have to do that much. And then when you throw it too early, like the Scorpion King, that's where things go really dicey. It's like he just wasn't. The reps weren't there.
Wasn't he the Tooth Fairy as well?
He was. Yes.
Tooth Fairy's all right. I think Tooth Fairy's all right. And what was the other one? The Longest Yard or something like that, where he's a football player and has a kid, or takes care of a kid.
Gridiron Gang.
Is it Gridiron Gang? Gridiron Gang is all right.
Like, but again, he picks a lot of stuff that he's in his wheelhouse. Like I think he tried to map it out and do very safe. Like, oh, you're gonna do the kids movie. That's why you're gonna do the Tooth Fairy, and you're gonna do this stuff. And he was really charming in the 3 minutes in Get Smart. I thought he was really good in that movie. Again, it's like shows up, does things, and then it's like, and then the other guys too. He was good for the 3 minutes. He was good in the other.
Well, listen, here's the good news: is that he just so happens to have a television show that seems to be chronicling his life, called Young Rock, and we are getting to the point where he's well into his wrestling career already in that show. So by season 6, we should be getting into his movie selections.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff they also gloss over in that show. It's like, for those who don't know, read the story about his additional 5 siblings across Canada. Anyways, welcome to the Heroes World Quarantine podcast.
3 of which are not us.
I am one of your hosts, Dupe. With me is one of the owners and proprietors of Heroes World, that'd be Mr. John Ho.
Howdy, folks.
And our resident Prince of Mischief, Mr. Rob Gadet.
Howdy, folks.
You son of a bitch.
Yes, we are here finally. After last week, I was berating Rob to get John to watch the Monster Squad. I finally said enough is enough, and we're just going to do it.
Yeah, you were like, you were just twigging me like something fierce on this one.
Well, I was just saying, we've typically you don't do a review of a review within the same calendar year. It's like a reboot and a reboot. It's like you need spacing. But Rob is all about the cult of the new, so he wanted to go back to it, and I'm all right with that.
It's all about the interaction on the Sidekick Show. That's why.
Yeah. With movies that Rob even forgot we did. So it's like
I feel like everybody forgot we did Ghostbusters Aftermath because they didn't watch it till it hit digital.
Yeah, we were the suckers that went to watch in the theater, and then
everyone. It was great.
I liked it
in the theaters. It was really good in theaters.
Yeah. I'm happy I went and saw it. In fact, if you're watching this right now, boys and girls, and this is the week of October the 17th, I guess. If you want to get your copy of Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's $10 right now on iTunes.
Ooh. Yes, and coincidentally, there's a new Ghostbusters video game that popped up, so you can play that too.
That's true. Yeah,
on PC, Xbox, and all the other things. So, yeah, we are here. We're going to discuss Monster Squad, a little movie from 1987. It is something that, as Rob mentioned, not easy to find. So if you can find it, find it. But
it's currently on iTunes for $7.
Hey.
You can get it on Blu-ray. I'll put the links. I'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, it is one of those movies that came out. Many people thought this is very convenient that a movie called The Goonies came out in 1985, and then later, another bunch of kids surrounded adventure. And I'm like, I think that's most of these movies are basically adolescent teens and kids going on adventures. Essentially, that's also Red Dawn. So you can pick any of these movies with a bunch of
they're just derivative of each other, right?
It's the blueprint for Stranger Things, right?
Although, what one was pirates, this was the monsters, one was Russians.
Yeah.
Each one had their own foibles. But here we go. If you haven't seen Monster Squad, it came out in 1987, so probably most of you haven't seen it in theaters. I will also be surprised if anyone watches this review, but this is one, as you say, for me.
Yeah,
let's see what happens.
We're gonna convince you to watch it right now.
This movie was fun because it was written by a
screenwriter
of now
high caliber.
high caliber. Shane Black wrote this movie of Lethal Weapon fame. Wrote this movie. 6 months later, Lethal Weapon came out in the movie theater. So he was like in the same caliber. Monster Squad.
Do you think the two cops were supposed to be Lethal Weapon?
Yeah,
Mel Gibson and Danny Glover cameos. If this was current continuity or current movie,
I'm not gonna lie, because when I saw the I think the African American police officer, I stopped him like, it's that guy. I know him from like somewhere, and he's like in all these. He's basically the classic, like, that guy's in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Including the fact that I think the mother of this film is also in Die Hard, who plays
she's the psychiatrist in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, but she's also in Die Hard. I think
she's the newscaster. Yes, in Die Hard, she plays the newscaster. In the studio.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, this is fun. So this is a movie that came out. John, before watching this movie, you've already said hundreds of times you are not a fan of Werewolf by Night. I said, hey, we're gonna watch this film.
In fact, I think to quote our friend John Ho, I think he said, well, Werewolf by Night is a giant piece of shit. I think that's what he had said.
I don't know if I went that far, but I said I didn't
I know Rob has seen this. I think, Rob, when was the last time you saw this movie?
Well, yesterday.
But before this.
You clever girl.
Actually, I gotta say, it's been about probably 20-something years.
So I'm interested to get Rob's take, because I have fond memories of this film, and I don't. Sometimes when you rewatch it, you're like, ooh, does this hold up? John, I think the pitch was very easy. What if the Goonies interacted with Universal's monsters? Although you're not allowed to call it the Creature from the Black Lagoon, he was known as Old Man. This is like an off-brand, off-brand GoBots. Even Frankenstein had to have the bolts on his head, because on the neck it was too close to the Universal one, and they'd be sued. So everything was a little bit off. So John, give us kind of your non-spoilery thoughts, because you went with this
non-spoiler for 1987. So my history for this is I had no clue what this movie is. Stu mentioned it several times, and I would just be like, Monster Squad. For some reason, I think I was mistaking it with Mystery Man or one of those weird movies where it's like a group of people doing something. Yeah, completely different. No, I don't know. I didn't know what or Mod Squad. I don't know if there's something called Mod Squad.
Yeah, the Mod Squad was a show from like
Giovanni Ribisi. And
I had no idea what to expect.
Games. Yes.
Yeah. So I fired it up, and I was a little worried, because I was like, what the hell's going on? This is like looking pretty old school. And then that name, and I sent you guys the picture. The name popped up on the screen, and it said Creature or whatever, designed by Stan Winston's Workshop, who we all know from basically every good 80s, 90s kind of property. Terminator, I think, comes to mind, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But he is like a genius if you got to make an animatronic corpse or whatever the hell it is. So I knew that I would at least like all the stuff kind of associated with the movie. And yeah, man, did they deliver, man. I really liked how everything looked. It was all practical. Some of it looked a little cheesy, but man, if it didn't look like a good cheesy. So overall, this movie is kind of like when you remember these old movies from the 80s and stuff like that, you want the movie to be fun and be able to be watchable in today's current standards. And I think this one actually does stand up. There's some iffy stuff that I guess we'll get into as spoilers, like some of the language and I don't know if you would call them slurs or insults, are things that are not kosher right now or not bueno right now. So other than that, this movie is a ton of fun, and it moves at a pretty good clip. So if you haven't watched it and you're in the mood for some monster fun, I think you can definitely fire this up and have a good time.
It's a smooth 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a quick. It's one of those.
It's good. Yeah, it doesn't dive too deep into it's got kids in it. Like I've got the picture down there. It's got all the monsters, which are what you want to watch it for. But it's got kids starring in it. But it doesn't delve too long on their origins and what they're doing in their day to day. It kind of just keeps things rolling.
I think the director said at one point, and they've done a whole bunch of meetings at the Alamo Draft House, and it's become this big cult movie because it didn't really make money when it came out, just like a lot of films, and it's kind of grown. Yeah, you'd be surprised. No one went to see this movie, but it's really grown in its cult status. So I think the director said originally they had a 13-minute extra cut, but they had to 13 minutes more of movie. But the studio was like, it's got to be 90, man. This is the way it is. 130 in and out. So
it was good. It felt tight. It felt like it didn't overstay its welcome.
It's a different time. No, that's good. Rob, give us your thoughts, because it's as the song goes, it's been a while.
Been a minute, Rob. Kick him in the nads, Rob. Kick him in the nads.
So even though I said I've seen this maybe about 20-something years ago, that would still put me in my 20s. So I 87.
What, Rob? No, you don't. No way. No, you kid, Rob. You kid.
I was 11 when this came out, so I did not go to the theater to see it. However, I did, quote unquote, grow up a little bit watching these movies. Like Goonies was my jam, and all those teen angst dramas, or those young preteen movies that you would get and everything else like that, right? I'm trying to hide it. Porky's, like you were just in the 80s was a much different time, right? You were just exposed to a whole bunch of really different shit. So Monster Squad came out like with the Explorers, and you knew it was a low rent Goonies, and yet it still kind of held a little bit of fun, because you're seeing your Universal monsters. Let's go back in time, kids. You're seeing Universal monsters that you would watch your parents' versions of, because there wasn't really any modern day of those movies. So as we can see in the picture, if you're watching us on YouTube, like Dracula with that ridiculously, like the red inlaid cape and all that stuff, like that was the stuff you would see from like the black and white movies of those old school Universal movies, modernized. And so for us, it was like, holy shit, this is amazing. It was kind of akin to watching like Young Guns, seeing like all westerns being brought into the 80s. It's something that I was like, cool. Now I'm getting into westerns. This is like your gateway into getting into those Universal movies if you hadn't been kind of exposed before. So it's very interesting in that regard. It is very much a carbon copy of Goonies in terms of the cast, including the chubby kid who they refer to as the fat kid the entire movie.
Does he not have a name? Do they just go, "Hey, fat kid"?
No, the very end of the movie, his name is Melvin, I think.
Subtitle, it says "Fat Kid Says."
I gotta say, I completely forgot or never recognized or realized that Shane Black was the writer of this movie, because I was like, what? Listen, it's worth watching. I question whether kids nowadays, like my kids, if they would see any value in watching this. My son enjoyed the Goonies. I would suspect he would not enjoy this, though.
Interesting. Even though it has all the tropes of an 80s film where they peep on a woman changing in the mirror and all the other things that
Frankenstein. He's a peeping Tom.
Wait, by the way, did anybody else think Frankenstein was a dead ringer for David Harbour?
He might like it because it's got Stranger Things kind of vibes. Like,
yeah,
he can probably see the roots. He can see the roots.
Things, but
100%. I'm actually watching season 2 at the same time as watching this movie. And
and you got confused, didn't you?
Yeah. I was like, "What's going on?"
I think rewatching it with a new lens is a different experience for me. Like again, I probably saw this film like Rob as a kid on VHS, and there was a couple times it was on TV because it fit that nice, like, oh, it's 190 minutes, so they could squeeze in like a 2-hour film on TV, and they could fit in commercials and splice it in. I think, John, you hit the nail on the head. There are some terminology in the film that I was like, whoa, I forgot this is what it is. And there's some really interesting, I'm like, this would not go fly today. But I think the monsters and the love and care they put to that side of it, you really had a good sense. And during my IMDb research, apparently they did say that first opening sequence, and this is not spoiling the movie, as John said, there's an opening sequence in the beginning of this film where they're trying to hunt Dracula. In the beginning, they were supposed to have, Shane Black wrote in it that Zeppelins and hundreds of men were storming the castle. And the director was like, "We can't afford this. We get it. We thank you for the idea, but it would cost more to do this than anything else. The budget of this movie." So I'd kind of wonder what that would have been like to have that type of, Van Helsing style like attack crew in the beginning of the film. It would definitely have. It has a very Thor feel, where these in like Scandinavia, what was it, Norway, taking the that was Captain America, right? In Norway, where he takes the cosmic cube. So it had that kind of feel, if you don't know what I'm saying. But I think it's still worth a watch. I can see why they've tried several times to resurrect this property, to reboot it. Because frankly, no one really cares about the Universal monsters. Even this it's without the Invisible Man there, but it is kind of
he was there, Stu.
But I'm saying
it was played by John Cena.
He's there the whole time, Stu.
You didn't notice him?
Yes. Thanks, guys. As if we planned that bit. It's. I really think that you can see the care and love, John, as you mentioned before. They took their time and they made a movie that is fun to go back to. So I'm happy I saw it again. I don't know whether I'll watch it. Maybe it's every 2-year situation. couple years, every couple years. But I think there's a couple moments that I was like just flat out laughing again. I'm like, oh man, this is great. Like this is.
There's a point where whoever the guy is playing Dracula, there's a couple scenes where he's really going for it. He's going super serious, and then I guess at some point they were like, "Yo, this movie's a comedy, dude." And then he just was like, "Oh, okay, I guess." But there's a couple scenes where you're just like, "This guy's really like going for this Dracula thing."
He was trying to own that role from Christopher.
Yeah, he was like going for an Oscar or something. He was like, "This is Dracula," and then I guess he realized the content of the movie, and then he's like, "Okay, let's ham it
up." That would be Canadian Duncan Peter Reiger, who was a figure skater / actor. He was also Zorro in a bunch of Family Channel movies. I remember him fondly from Star Trek, The Next Generation, as the ghost that was trying to bed Beverly Crusher. I don't know if you remember this episode where Beverly Crusher
get some action.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes I'm like, go back, I'm like, Star Trek TNG, it's not as good as you think. And I always go, remember that episode where Beverly Crusher is like dating the space ghost? And that's Dracula. So I was laughing. I'm like, this is weird. Star Trek TNG, there are some good episodes, and then she's like wearing period piece clothing, and she's on like some weird house, and this ghost is wooing her. I was like, yeah. Anyways, there's he did. I really like that Dracula performance. I'm not gonna lie. So, it had its moments.
It was good, but it's just funny. You see the dial turn at a certain point. You're just like, oh, we're going this direction. I got it.
Like, you know what? In all fairness, though, like it goes back to what I was saying is that pre this movie, there wasn't like you knew of Dracula, you knew, and you would watch those older movies, a lot of TV shows, right?
Yeah.
Like, or even if you were a kid growing up in Canada, you had the hilarious House of Frightenstein, and you would kind of get like a low rate, Dracula. But to be honest with you, this is, aside from this movie, the next iteration of Dracula was Coppola's Dracula.
Yeah.
Played by Gary
Oldman.
Gary Oldman, like I think that was like a 91 or 92, so it was only about 5-6 years later. But yeah, like you didn't get a lot of these modern day movies with a Dracula back then. So you it's kind of like how we talk about superhero movies back then. You were just happy with what you got because you didn't get them very often.
John, what do you give this movie out of 10?
Judging, are we going today's standards, or are we transporting ourselves back to the 80s?
What, honestly?
Oh God, John's gonna have 2 scores.
Okay, so if you take into account that this movie was made back then, and then you can appreciate the Stan Winston art and craftsmanship of this movie, I think it still deserves like a 7 out of 10. And you could definitely watch it the whole way through, and then be done with it. Yeah, like you guys said, never to be watched again.
John, what do you give this score if you're in the 80s? If you were thrown back in the 80s, then
If I was in the 80s, I feel like I would definitely have given this a 9.
oh,
If you were back then and all these monsters that come out and you're like, oh my god, look, there's like this budget predator in here and there's like this I think out of all of them, the Wolfman definitely kind of looked the worst. It looked a little like iffy. But
well, don't forget though, it was fighting with Teen Wolf at the time.
Yeah. Teen Wolf is actually pretty funny looking as well.
Rob?
You know what? I am going to give it. I'm going to give it a 7. I think you owe it to yourself to watch it at least once.
Raising ads.
I'm
Put that on the box.
Never
Put
seen
that on the
this
DVD box. Rob Gadet. You owe it yourself to watch this film once.
Put it on the rental.
Yeah. Hey, TriStar, you can use that, print it as you wish.
I can imagine that on the poster on the box. Rob Gadet.
Rob's face like this, like okay.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I same as you today. Yahtzee. I'm gonna go with 7 as well.
Triple sevens.
I still think this movie is good. It was shocking at parts. I'm like, oh, but I think that it still has a place to, because frankly, we're not going to get the Dark Universe anytime soon. So this is the best chance we're going to get all these Universal monsters together. So outside of outside of that picture that they had all the actors on the chair.
Remember that the Rolling Stone picture or whatever it was?
Yeah, when they're like, oh, there's Johnny Depp and Javier Bardem and like Tom Cruise and like this is the Monsters universe. Universals. So yeah, anyways, let's we're gonna go into full spoilers in a second, but yeah, I think we all recommend that you should watch it if you can find it on whatever means possible on DVD or Blu-ray or iTunes or whatever. Find it, watch it. It's a good, let's say it definitely feels like a Halloween movie. I'm not saying watch this movie in July, but definitely in the month of October, you definitely should watch it. It's kind of like
You'll have a good laugh. You'll have a good laugh.
Yeah, kind of like watching Elf. December's the time to do it. There's no other time. Or Scrooged. You're not going to watch that in the middle of March. Yeah. So it is a quintessential Halloween movie. So I definitely recommend to do it. So John, let's go into spoilers. Throw up the
Whoa, that's new. Look at that.
Wow.
Wow, the budget in this show is just increasing.
Well, we had to pay the Stan Winston studio to make that, Rob. So you're not going to get paid for the next 3 years, unfortunately.
Yeah, there goes my 1 box of Kraft dinner on for
2 boxes, Rob. 2. Don't sell yourself short. So we're gonna have full spoilers to this. John, give us your list. Tell us.
Yeah, okay. So I just read through
40-year-old movie.
A list of things that I thought were like hilarious, or at least like good like observations when you're watching this movie to watch out for. So I don't really have them in order, except for I do have my all-time favorite thing, and I'll leave that to the end. But one of the things is musical montage. Where they're making the monster weapons. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in the shop class and everything like that.
You didn't melt down silver.
Yeah. I was like, yo, this guy's melting and making bullets in glass. Like, what the hell is going on? What's up with this
America?
Shop? Maybe, yeah. So if you guys went to a shop class and you had the ability to melt down metal and make it into bullets.
To be fair, my high school shop, we could do a lot. Like we had a garage to fix cars. Metal work, yeah, we had stuff. We could have done
to melt metal
bullets.
Sorry, to melt metal. Yeah, no, pretty crazy.
You needed the so I went to Markham District High School, and we had back in that time period a tech wing that was made in the 80s, and in that tech wing they had both the music arts but also the technical side, which was the mechanic shop. A lot of the woodworking, all the mechanical devices there, and there was things to melt. They had the actual
like the crucibles or whatever it is,
kiln and all that.
Yeah, and the hat, the mask, the welding mask. They had all the welding equipment because they were teaching people. Some people didn't want to go to university; they wanted life skills. So actually teaching them how to do vehicle repair. So some of the teachers would get their thing, and the kids would be like, "Okay, we'll change the tires," because you get practice to like put on winter tires and like do certain things to vehicles. So yeah, we definitely had that. At your school, John, of the School of the Arts, I'm sure they didn't have the technical things, but
we
I did
probably
have
had
a gun range in my school, and
busted.
I went to high school for up in Uxbridge, and it had just for grade 9 before I moved back to Toronto, and it did have a firing range that I used to fire guns there in Army cadets. But that's a story for a different time, ladies.
Yeah. So John's thing was there was at the art school of the arts, there's probably like a mime slash
John, you're in a box.
Yeah, everyone's trapped in a box, and an interpretive dance room and all these things. So
would have come in real handy on the Monster Squad.
I that's where Hayden Christensen learned how to do all his moves, because man, you got to know how to do that Jedi stuff.
Oh my goodness!
While you're holding that,
you guys would have been totally taking the lead
on. Honestly, I mad respect to that dude, because he did all his own stunts. So I'm sure he did a lot of like ribbon dancing and stuff, and like preparing himself for this in the Univille Arts program. So yeah, for sure because even was it Obi-Wan Ewan was like, yeah, this guy made this move, and like you see it in the movie where thing behind his back or whatever. So props to Hayden Christensen. He really doing it, man.
They did put in the work, since we're taking it aside for Star Wars. If you ever watch the special features, you see him, McGregor and Hayden Christensen just going back and forth with the practice lightsabers. Like they legit were going at it for that movie. So anyways, so yeah, musical montage, always great. The song was hilarious. It was like,
no, it wasn't. It was atrocious. It was a no-name song.
It was funny. It was like rock till you drop or something
on the radio.
First off, Rob, that song exists. It's by a band that actually the single still is. It's from somewhere. Unlike the song Monster Squad, that was, I think, just made up because of Ghostbusters. They're like, the end, someone's rapping. Rapping's a thing. Let's just rap at the end of this movie. But
we get the Fat Boys? No? All right, we'll get you then. All right.
Anyways, next up, at the end when everything's getting pulled through the wind.
Yeah.
I laugh because there's one part where one of the girls gets staked through the heart, and she's just lying on the floor. And you just see her go past in the background. It's like the funniest thing. And you're like, how'd they do that? Did they just grab strings and they're just pulling people? Yep. The same thing happens with Frankenstein. Literally, someone's probably just pulling his legs. But it's a really funny effect. What else? The mummy unraveling, I thought was great. Some of the things that I thought was really kind of made you kind of pause for a second. The treehouse exploding, that was hilarious. Dragon does the dynamite, the treehouse just goes, go.
Here, better question. Where did he get the dynamite from?
Yeah, I don't know. He just had sticks of it like crazy. I guess he made it up. There's one point where the police, they're shooting the Wolfman, and the bullets don't work, so they proceed to rush in and start going with fisticuffs. I'm like, okay, shooting's not working. You think this is gonna work? And they all go in, and I'm like rightly so for them to die. And then my all-time funniest thing, and now I can see it was probably a line written by Shane Black, is the black cop who plays a very stereotypical black character. So that kind of sucked that he just had to kind of play the role. But he was killing it. One point, I think they're talking about the mummy that got up, and he's like, I don't know what we're gonna do in this case. The body got up and walked out. It's too hard. This case is too hard. Let's be firemen instead, or something like that. And I laughed so hard because I didn't know if he was being sarcastic or if he was being serious. And then he gets blown up later. Like the dynamite gets thrown into the cop car, and he's gone. Right? He's dead.
Yeah.
They don't ever show him again. I was like, the window. I was like, boom. And then the cop who, after he blows up that guy, the cop just stands there and doesn't unload bullets into Dracula. He's like waiting for some reason. Like I was like, you son of a bitch, you gotta avenge me and shoot that guy right away. Like, why are you letting him blow me up and then proceeding to not shoot him? But anyways, lots of stuff to laugh at in this movie. So those were my favorite things. And then they added a little thing at the end where Frankenstein gets pulled away from the little girl, which did break my heart a little bit. And then she throws him the teddy bear, and I was like, oh man, I would check for an after credit scene where maybe Frankenstein came back, but it wasn't there, folks. So
There was no such thing as after credit scenes unless it was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That was the only time there was after credit scenes.
The He-Man movie had it.
He-Man.
Yeah, Masters of the Universe. Skeletor pops up at the end.
That's right.
The hand that pops up, yeah.
I think
how
he actually
old
pops
do you think
up.
the girl was?
She was supposed to be 5.
Okay,
but I don't think she was.
Apparently, that scene, again, the details from IMDb, the scene where Dracula lifts up Phoebe and she screams was done in one take. So apparently, when they did it, the little girl was actually scared of his contacts and fangs. So every time she actually saw him, she actually would scream. So in that scene, like they directed on the first take, and essentially he closed his eyes and whatever. So when he actually does look at her for the first time, that's her actual real life like scream because she was like, this is not cool. So
it's funny because when he's lifting her up, I think the mom or someone's trying to go help, and someone's holding her back. I'm like, why are you holding her back? Why don't you let her at least try and help her 5-year-old?
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know what was going through the actor's mind, or if he tried to have a conversation with the director, but when the direction is, okay, you're going to lift up this 5-year-old girl and you want her to give you back the amulet and you're going to call her a bitch.
He didn't call a 5-year-old a bitch.
I know, right? Like, I don't know about that.
Shane Black, baby. Shane Black. Like, now that you say Shane Black, you're like, this totally makes sense.
No, I don't know about
that. It's too hard, Rob. Let's be firefighters. That's such a great line.
I think that's our new go-to when movies are so terrible. Be like, John, this is too hard. Let's be firefighters.
Yeah. Too hard being a cop. Let's be firefighters.
That's a great line. Morbius was a whole piece of shit. He should just quit and be a firefighter.
Yeah.
It's too hard. This is too hard, Rob. Let's be firefighters. I also think the movie. So fun for also fact too. What does Liam Neeson and Dustin Diamond have in common? John.
Dustin Diamond, is he the guy from Saved by the Bell?
That's correct. Yes. Rob.
Late Dustin Diamond.
All right. Well, both R.I.P. But yeah.
Liam Neeson is still alive.
Yeah, he's asking what they have in common. Rob,
is Liam Neeson still alive?
Yeah, of course he is. From Taken.
He is. He's making Taken 17.
Oh no, I'm not Liam Neeson. Sorry.
Leslie Nielsen.
Right. Liam Neeson yeah, what is Liam Neeson and
Leslie Nielsen?
No, Liam.
Oh, Liam Neeson?
Yeah. Oh. Sorry, you're right.
What do they have? What does he and Screech have in common?
Yep.
They both auditioned for this movie and did not make the cast.
Close. They're both in this movie, but they were cut.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Fun fact: Seth Green auditioned and he did not get the part. So he was trying hard and not there.
Wait, their biggest name star was Jason Hervey, as seen from the Wonder Years.
Yes. Hey man. He was great as Dove in Justice League Unlimited. Him and Fred Savage, which we're not allowed to talk about anymore. Rob,
yeah.
What are your spoiler thoughts of this little movie called The Monster Squad?
Okay, I'm gonna share something with you guys. All right, there's just 3 of us here, right?
Yeah.
When I was a young man, I had a thing for vampire brides. I don't know what it was. I always found vampire brides to be super hot, and I used to think to myself, I would probably sacrifice myself to a really hot vampire bride.
Yeah. So when they were all coming at all the different directions, you would have ran to the vampire brides.
As an 11-year-old watching this movie, like those vampire, I wanted more vampire brides because that was my jam, and I don't know why. I don't know what that says about me now. But watching this reminded me of those times where my heart palpitations would go on. Oh, vampire brides. And your stunning silence speaks volumes.
Just you, man.
So this,
John, this is too hard. This is too hard.
This is too hard. It's too hard, Stu. Let's be firefighters.
Hey, it's not the only thing that was hard with vampire brides.
This case, it's too hard.
Listen, as when you're watching this movie again, when you're as a kid, I think it gives you. you don't have the critical eye that you do as you get into adulthood. And I often, when I rewatch these movies, I often wonder, how do adult critics view these movies? Like, I know that you go to school, you get somewhat trained and stuff like that, but like as you grow older, your tastes change. And how do you, if you're Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel at the time watching this movie, how can you like look at it and be like, yeah, this is great. As a kid, we were like, this is pretty cool. Even though, again, you knew it was a low rent Goonies ripoff, right? But again, you had the Explorers, you had Goonies. I mean, this is Stand By Me times as well, like a few years before. So, and then The Lost Boys was just the year after, I think, in 1988. So you got also some decent Vampire Brides. You got a pretty decent amount of like that teen movies coming at you. So you were able to like, kind of how we do with the MCU movies, just start ranking them, which ones are good and bad, right? And Black Widow's always at the bottom. But rewatching this now, it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation, obviously not really for this podcast or because it would be a bit of a downer. But when we look at these and we look at them from a 2022 lens and the verbiage that is used or the, I hate to tell you guys, but a lot of those movies, that's how people spoke back then. Right? You would call each other things like that, derogatory names, because you were influenced by the art, which was influenced by you. It was it was an interesting, circle, right? So, but yeah, man, you look at this stuff and it's funny, it's cheesy. Right? Like this movie is cheese. It doesn't have the polish of the Goonies. And unfortunately, we keep mentioning the Goonies, or maybe I do, but that's the closest comparison because if you look at it, it literally is beat for beat, except as Stu said it earlier in this show, swap out the adventure of pirates and put in the Universal monsters. There's even that part. So when they break into that house and I want to call the kid Sean. I think that's his name, right? Isn't it Sean? It's the same as the Goonies name. And he's like, what are you doing? He goes, I don't know. Have you heard the Hardy Boys? There's always like a lever or something. And he pulls the arm of the statue and drops down, right? And then they drop down to like this crypt where it looks like it was taken out of like the side piece of a Goonies lot. It's not a scary movie. It's not meant to be a scary movie. Stu, you had said that they have been trying for a number of years to get a relaunch of this property. I was surprised that it hadn't, but then I remembered Fright Night. And I remembered that Fright Night came out in 86, I think, or 85. And then they did a remake a number of years ago, like maybe 6 years ago or so with Colin Farrell.
And David Tennant. And that did not light the box office. And I really, if I remember correctly, I think that the Monster Squad was in talks of being remade around the time that the newer Fright Night was coming out. Yeah,
and Fright Night, again, I think it tanked, and they were like, "Monster, what?" And I really do think that this movie, though, like there should be a reboot of this. I'm utterly shocked that it hasn't. I think in modern day standards and special effects, I think this would kill. To be very honest with you, I think it would totally kill.
I think the reboot would flip it, though. The monsters would be the heroes. That'd be great. I wanted to see where the monsters. I thought they were the good guys of this movie when I started firing it up.
Please excuse John. He's watching Disney's Descendants, where all the kids are the
all the bad guys.
I think that'd be great if these guys were the heroes trying to save the day.
You have Ursula's kid as a good guy all of a sudden, trying to figure out what to do. These are things.
Listen. Hey, if you're a big fan of werewolf movies, I'm gonna tell you, you likely will be let down by this version of a werewolf.
Good guy, was he a bad guy? What was it?
Yeah, he throws people a lot. It was like the Incredible Hulk TV series. He just threw you through windows and doors.
He wasn't a bad guy when he kept on telling like, "Hey, monsters are coming. I'm a werewolf," and the police are like, "Yeah,
he's like, kill me." The police were terrible. They proceeded to get all these calls, and it's all the weird shit happening at night. And they're like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna ignore this call."
Well, but and listen, you have to listen. We're talking about like monsters, like the Universal monsters. You have to suspend your disbelief. However, there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief that also is required of logic. Sorry, a suspension of logic in this movie. Sean realizes on the whiteboard that, hey, Sean, there's a message for you from Mr. Aculard or whatever. And he's like, that's a weird name. And then starts trying to figure out the anagram. And he's like, Dracula. Like, I guess Dracula called him and left a voicemail. Dracula knows how to use phones. Also, at the beginning of the movie, when Van Helsing is there and things don't work out well, there's no explanation as to why now there's 100-year time jump. Like, what happened to Dracula and all those monsters? And like, it doesn't really, the assumption is they're like, well, we're going to have to wait for another 100 years and then we'll come back. But it was just kind of weird. They just appeared.
That's a weird timer.
Well, Van
Helsing at the end is like,
they were on the Zeppelins. We missed it.
And the beginning crawl of this movie gives you a little bit of a backstory and a bit of foretelling of what is coming. And the best part about it is that Van Helsing and his friends had to stop the Universal monsters or the monster, and then it scrolls and goes, they blew it. And then that sets up that you think, holy shit, this is going to be a really funny movie. And it that's probably the funniest line in the movie aside from the fire.
Well, yeah, the 5.
So yeah, you know what? Like, all in all, from an 80s lens, from 1987 lens, where you didn't have a lot of these, stuff. You had a TV show about a guy, Stu, you might remember this, who turned into a werewolf. He had a pentagram on his hand, and he was and all of a sudden you turned it. Like, you had a little bit, but you didn't have a lot. This is the movie where it brought everybody together. It was like the Avengers. It was like or Legion of Doom. They all came together, and you had to defeat them. So
and all of us in Canada know, for us, Rob and I would watch Forever Night, the vampire detective in Toronto. John has no idea what that is, but that was a thing back in the day on TV.
Right. We also had My Secret Identity, where a kid flew around using aerosol cans to pilot. So, hey kids, the 80s. But anyways,
let's just say that it would have been really cool, like, to think about how having like a movie theater, like a drive-in that big where you could sit on your roof and see a movie. I was like, how does that even work? I'm like,
tune into the radio station so you could get the audio.
I was like, that was the coolest thing. I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool. But I'm like, I just sat there as a kid. I didn't think anything of it, but I thought about it now. I'm like, how does that logistically work? Yeah. So I just started sitting there like, I don't think. Anyways, yes.
But you know what, Stu? I think you were right in saying that this is this should be watched this time of year. And not to compare it, but if you're going to watch the original Hocus Pocus around Halloween with your family, I think this is one of those movies that you could probably slide in as every year, every 2 years or whatever, and say, hey, let's watch it, because I think it does lend itself well to that. You just have to prep your kids by saying, it's the 80s, man. And some language was not quite appropriate back then. So
yeah, it is that. So yeah, I think there's some fun moments, and it's kind of like The Sandlot too, where there's a scary adult, the scary German man, of course.
Yeah, with the knife, and he goes, "Your time is almost up to have more pie."
What's going on?
So, okay, Rob, that's 3 scenes that are good. They blew it. It's too hard, and the pie. So let's. I think we've discovered the 3 scenes, but we all love the most. John, where can we find you on the internet?
Wait, what about you, Stu? Don't you have any thoughts on this, or
no?
No.
I think you guys covered a lot of the fun things that I wanted to talk about. I think the movie is about for you to discover. I think if you're looking for that type of naivete of the 80s, this is what it is. So this is like kind of a feel-good-lucky. They don't have cell phones. Like, they're just kind of sorting things out on their own. It's kids that are free-ranged now.
Yeah, they're out till like 10:30. The parents, first of all, they're awake and they're walking. The parents are walking around fully clothed at 10:30 at night. Let me tell you, something doesn't happen. That's not real life. And the kids are out. They're out at like 10 o'clock at night, and the parents not concerned at all. There's no worry whatsoever. Also, a bunch of young tweens are hanging out at Pot Tate's milk shop, chilling out, having ice cream sodas at like 11, and nobody seems to care. This is a bizarre.
Different time, Rob. Different time. It's different time. Yeah. Kids will go out, and there weren't the internets, and there weren't things.
I don't know how late it was, but it used to be go out and play during the day, come home when it gets dark. That's when it was back when I grew up. Yeah.
It's a different time. Everything about this is a different time. So yeah, I think there's a fun, like, kind of just like I said before, part of this movie that it brings you back to a time period where, you know, that's when you watch these type of movies and the where they don't have a cell phone. Now anything you watch a movie, it's like resolved quickly. It's like you got to find a way to knock out the person's cell phone, either if the power is dead or something. You resolve everything very quickly now.
Well,
that
it's the
time period, it's like
simplicity of those movies. It's almost relaxing to watch them now because you actually had to use your ingenuity to figure shit out.
it is what I think. What people say, there's only one place in the world that replicates that feeling. Apparently, no. Apparently, at the Masters in Georgia, they do not allow you to take cell phones during the golf tournament. So you have to lock it up. So when you go there, all the stories of people that go there. It's like, okay, we're gonna meet at this tree, kids, at like 1 o'clock. I'll see you then. So just everyone just walks away, and they're like, "We'll come back and meet you there." And if you didn't come back at 1, we may never see you again. So there are like a lot of people that talk about that experience as like the food hasn't changed prices. You can buy a sandwich still for like $3 and whatnot. But the other thing is like to go somewhere where not one person has a device that's doing this, or doing this. It's like it brings you back to a time that you can't even experience anywhere else, where not one person has a fancy camera or a camera phone. So that is one of my bucket list experience, going to time machine.
Although in all fairness, the Mass Augusta also didn't allow people of non-Caucasian race to play there up until a number of years ago, or allow women to play there up until about 6 years ago. But I digress.
Yeah. But
Georgia.
Hey man, I'm not gonna touch that one. But hey, if you want to experience going in a time machine where no one has a electronic device, that's the place. So,
or North Korea. It just depends on what.
I think. Well, here's the thing: in North Korea, I think a lot of the officials would have the devices. You would not have it, but everyone else would have it.
No.
So they would be taking a look at you. But
this movie would probably just be hitting cinemas there about now.
Heavily edited.
Depends if Kim Jong-un is in it. Okay, John, tell us, where can they find you in the Desert of the Real and on the internets?
Yeah, so Heroes World Online, our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, even our website. I've been doing a lot of work on the website lately, so check it out. Lots of new fun stuff on there. And then Desert of the Real, 8601 Warden Avenue. All those links will be in the description. Thank you, everybody, for always sharing and tuning in. If you're on audio podcast, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcast.
Rob, what's going on the Sidekick Show?
Yeah, so this coming Monday, 8:15 p.m. live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. We are in week 4 of our Halloween October Spooktacular, and we will be watching and revisiting Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is currently streaming for free on Amazon Prime if you're a subscriber. I don't know, Stu. Hey, what do you want me to say? It's on Amazon Prime in Canada. If you are
This case is too hard, Rob. This case is too hard. Let's be firefighters.
Yeah, you know what the Monster Squad did? Its version of the Truffle Shuffle, and then it really would have.
Honestly, what people don't know at home is Rob's just gonna replay our old review and just play.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be hilarious.
Welcome to the Sidekick Show. Play and then just.
Yeah, if you see me freeze like this, I'm waiting for it to kick in. But anyways, we have lots of other things that we do on that show as well, Stu. Dum. We talk about news and new things in the store as well. So join us Monday night, and it's up for people to join us, and they can chat through the YouTube channels and we bring people together, Stu. All right, yeah. We are like our own Monster Squad. And we don't sacrifice virgins. So you can check us out live Monday night, 8:15 p.m. live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Be safe out there, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
All right. Peace out.
Monster Squad.